Another episode of Book Parade on Wells Radio 89.3 FM, your preferred wholesome radio. Every single week, I sit down with an interesting and intriguing author and we look into their book. We look at the what, the where, the why, and the how. And particularly, I just like to look at how we can, mirror it in today's perspective, especially as a young person navigating life in this our Nigeria. So if you're a bookworm or if, you're very interested in books, then welcome. If you're not really the book person, I would still say welcome because we can all learn, every day from something. All right. So welcome to Wells Books Parade on Wells Radio 89.3 FM, your preferred wholesome radio. My name is Osara Namasaba. Most people know me as the Edo Queen, and I'm always super, super excited to sit down with the authors to discuss their books. An interesting thing is, prior to, handling this book parade, I probably would have said, oh, I'm really not a book person. But given that I am hosting a book review show, I definitely have taken to reading more. And I would say it's been a great addition. So if you would say you're not the book person as well, then I would say just give it a try and you would see that you would love it. All right. So an amazing book we have today. And of course, we have the author live with us in the studio and we're going to be looking at her book. Now, the title of this book is Regain Your Self-Worth. Regain Your Self-Worth. Now, this book is basically to help us, right, every single person, to overcome low self-esteem and, of course, to silence inner voices that live in your head. I know that as we navigate life, at some point you probably have questioned your self-worth. You probably have questioned, who you are and what you stand for. And probably maybe you've had experiences that could have damaged or affected your self-esteem. Right. So if that is you, if you've struggled with low self-esteem or self-confidence or, always, struggling with voices in your head, then this is the book you need to read. And of course, if you want to improve your own self-worth or understand your self-worth more, then this book is also for you. Regain Your Self-Worth. And our author of the day is Maureen Oluwatobi. That is our author of the day. She's an educator, an entrepreneur, and a multi-gifted creative. She's helping people heal and empowering them to live intentional and wholesome lives. She's the director of the Maureen Oluwatobi Foundation and convener of Demystify Abuse campaign, a project committed to eliminating sexual violence in Africa and supporting survivors to navigate healing and recovery. She's also the creative director of Regal by Design, a lifestyle brand shining God's light and promoting wholesome living one product at a time, right? And of course, she has also written a few other books and know that we are more than happy to welcome her to the show today. Welcome, Maureen. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing okay. I'm doing very well. Thank you.
All right. So, of course, usually I would always start off by asking, regain your self-worth. What was the inspiration behind the book? We've already seen that, I've touched briefly on the fact that the book is, speaking about self-esteem, self-confidence, and, just understanding yourself more. So what is the inspiration behind this book, Regain Your Self-Worth?
Interesting question. I get asked that question a lot. So a couple of years back, I didn't know my worth. I suffered low self-esteem. I didn't have confidence in my ability, my potentials. And of course, because I didn't know my worth and I didn't have confidence in my ability, it affected my creativity and my productivity. So after I had regained my self-worth, I began to see myself differently. It turned out that I began to meet a lot of young people who were battling with what I had survived. So I made a decision that I was going to compile the lessons, the insights, the truth, and all of the practices that helped me on my journey, just to arm them enough to gain freedom so they can allow themselves to express their creativity and produce value. That was the simple inspiration behind the book, wanting to help other people enjoy the freedom and the liberation that I had enjoyed on my journey to overcoming low self-esteem.
All right, amazing. Just that great desire for people to enjoy similar freedom. I love that. Okay, so given that you journeyed from having low self esteem to realizing and understanding your self worth. Now, for
Yeah.
individuals who have had, troubled pasts, maybe with their upbringing, their family, or maybe even education, right? And, the experiences they had affected their self esteem. How can they, regain their self esteem or, apply that same route that you took to understanding your self worth?
Okay, to respond to this question, I'm going to give you a little background to my life and
Okay.
why I believe this question is actually very interesting and very beautiful.
All right.
I've been a survivor of sexual abuse.
Hmm.
I've also been a survivor of rape
Hmm.
and multiple different traumatic experiences,
Wow.
and I have had to embark on journey of healing and recovery, right? So on my journey of navigating healing and recovery, I've come to learn that one of the most important things that we must do is to attempt to study the impact of the past experience, whatever the experience might be. Every negative or unpleasant experience and even positive experiences, they all leave an impact in our lives.
Hmm.
So to heal from them, it's important to study the impact, study how that experience affected you. And that was something I had to do for myself also, because when you check your life or when you study your life, you're going to discover that, okay, there's something off about my behavior, there's something off about my mindset, there's something off about how I view and I perceive the world. But studying the impact of the experience places you on a platform where you can deal with those impacts, maybe one after the other, or
Hmm.
address them as an entire body, right? That
Yes.
way, you learn. One of the things you're going to do when you're dealing with the impact, you begin to learn the truth about your identity, which
Hmm.
is one of the most important springboards, right? That helps the healing and recovery of everyone who has survived any form of traumatic experiences. So when you do that, you begin to see yourself differently. You begin to discover your identity,
Hmm.
because one of the side effects of any traumatic experiences is your self-perception becomes distorted.
Hmm.
And once your self-perception becomes distorted, it's going to affect your mind, affect your relationship, and it's going to affect every aspect of your life. So on your journey of healing, identify who you are, rediscover your true identity, and then make a conscious decision that you're going to start seeing yourself through the lens of your original identity. And once you begin to see yourself differently, once you begin to look at yourself through the lens of your original identity, you're going to discover that according to the original design of your life, you were made whole, you were perfect, you were good from the very beginning, before these interruptions that we call trauma or past experiences. They are
Yeah.
simply interruptions, right? So embarking on this journey is going to help you rediscover yourself as a whole person.
Hmm.
And then your journey of healing and recovery is going to take you to that place of wholeness. If you've not gotten to that place of wholeness and recovery, then you know that you're still journeying, you're still healing. But to heal, to properly heal from yesterday,
Hmm.
you have to study the impact of the experiences, deal with the impact that you have identified,
Yeah.
learn the truth about your identity, and make a conscious decision that you're going to improve how you see yourself on a daily basis. That's what I'm going to share on that topic.
Amazing. So I think one thing I'll pinpoint is that you've pretty much shared how it is an intentional act, right? You have to be intentional
Yes.
about, assessing, the effect the traumatic experience had on you, and of course be intentional about seeing the good in yourself, or being a better person pretty much. And I think that's very, very solid. All right. And in your book, right, some of the chapters include, what is self worth, origin of your self worth, what is self esteem, and importantly,
Yeah.
types of self esteem. And I think
Yeah.
we're more familiar with people talking about, oh, low self esteem, here and there. But sometimes we don't speak about inflated self-esteem, which is something you covered in the book.
Yeah.
So in cases where there are people with inflated self-esteem, how can we identify them? And of course, how can we accommodate them peacefully? Say, for example, you are in a workplace and you notice that this person is just acting strange. How can you identify if it is, inflated self-esteem, and if it truly is, how, given that it's a work environment, you cannot resign or leave the job because of one person, you know,
Yeah.
if it's something you can work around. So how can we now accommodate people who have inflated self-esteem?
Okay. Inflated self-esteem is basically when a person has an overbloated or an exaggeration or exaggerated perception of their abilities, their talents, their worth, and their relevance. Once you're able to identify that someone has that sort of perception about themselves, one of the things you're going to discover, or one of the things I come to discover, is that many times those people are dealing with wounds, sometimes emotional wounds, psychological wounds, or sociological wounds that are trying to masquerade with this inflated esteem that they have. But if you check it deep down, they're still battling low self-esteem, because it's also going to show up that way. But they try to make themselves look larger than life. So when you encounter those kind of people and you have a healthy self-perception of yours, you'll be able to see through their facade. You'll be able to love them. And part of loving them means that you're going to make space for their journey of healing and recovery. You're going to make space for their humanity. And if you can, begin to point them in the direction of healing and recovery or solution. Even though some of them, they have assumed this larger than life self-perception, basically just to preserve themselves. Even when you're pointing them in the direction of solutions, they tell you, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm fine. I'm bold. I'm self-confident, right? Many of them do not even know they have issues. But understanding that any human being that does not have a healthy self-perception is not going to relate to other people better. So when you see any human being who see themselves as the most important, so much so that they don't mind hurting another person, that is a typical pointer to someone who has an inflated self-esteem. Do you get? They
Yes.
want everything to happen for them. They believe they are better than every other person. They don't mind putting other people down. Sometimes they don't even mind putting other people in harm's way just to get their way. So once you're able to identify that person, for someone who has compassion, who is relating with a person with inflated self-esteem, you will just discover that this person lacks attention or lacks affection while growing up, and they're throwing tantrums as adults just to be able to gain that affection. So if you can muster it, then you have to try as much as possible to go the extra mile to give them affection. And once you begin to give them attention and affection, you're going to discover that in many instances, their guards are going to be let down. Then you can let them know that, okay, there's something I've noticed about you. I would suggest you get help. The reason they'll be able to trust you is because over time you've shown them attention, affection, and they believe that you have their best interests at heart. But in order to break their walls, you don't go to them with aggression. You have to go with love and intentionality,
That's
right?
true.
Many times, many of them are dealing with insecurities and fears also that they do not want other human beings to see. They don't want people to see their insecurities. So they put up all of these walls that they put up. Again, understanding, love, compassion are some of the tools that we can use to help them, and also to ensure that we are not at the receiving end of their brass behavior. And of course, one of the things I do a lot of times is to do what we call this sandwich method, where you compliment them for something awesome about them, right? Before you give them any pointer or let
To
them know
work
of
on.
their limitations. Do you
Yes.
get? So there
Yes.
has to be something awesome about the person, even though sometimes that thing that's awesome about them, they over exaggerate it. So I've learned to compliment them I've learned to tell them they look good or they do something awesome, and then walk my way into their hearts, and
Hmm.
then let them know that, oh, there's something that you have to fix this, else you're going to break yourself and you're going to break more and more people. So those are some of the pointers.
Amazing. I think there's so much wisdom in that. Coincidentally, I think it was yesterday or this morning. I was just listening to, there was a video on Instagram,
Okay.
and you know, it was basically just sharing how even when you want to point out errors, it is important to
Yeah.
first of all commend or
Yeah.
compliment the work that has already been done. It makes it easier for the person to listen to you, and it makes you more approachable. And to be honest, it's very true, especially in the work environments, to be honest, or even when you're trying to reach out to someone who might seem very guarded or very defensive. But yes, there's a lot of wisdom in that. Thank you so much for sharing. And
Thank
you
you.
also
Thank
spoke
you.
about, yes, you also spoke about insecurities, right? And
Yeah.
personally, I always say that social media can do us good and do us a lot of harm. And for,
Very
I feel
true.
at every point in, an individual's life, they might have, one insecurity or the other,
Yeah.
right? And the truth is, sometimes you now, you turn on your phone, you go on social media, and the very first post you see will just be something that would trigger you, right? Or something that would make you so, God, see my life, you know. And I
Very
would always
true.
say, yes, I would always say that comparison can be very, very dangerous, especially with social media. And the fact that we're living in a technologically advanced world, it's not
Yeah.
easy, right? So, what practical ways can we apply, to shield ourselves from, the dangers of, social media, especially things that could harm our self-worth, our self-confidence, and,
Yeah.
just trigger some of our insecurities?
Okay. I'm actually very biased to this question that
Ah.
you asked. And my bias perhaps is as a result of my educational training. I actually would start by saying that the responsibility doesn't lie on individuals majorly.
Mm,
It goes way back to our educational system. We have to inculcate wholesome education that helps people deal with these things. I don't know about you, but I think I spent more than 16 years in school in total. And all through my time in school, nobody ever taught me about identity. Nobody taught me how to have a healthy self-esteem. Nobody taught me how to deal with comparison.
mm,
So I would say we have to revamp our educational system, start from them, and
okay.
begin to introduce these courses in schools, right? And make it institutionalized. Because if you're telling an individual who has gone to school for how many years, maybe that person is already 30, and you're
Mm,
now telling the person to start learning how to deal with comparison. Yes, it's possible, but that person is already disadvantaged because
mm.
there's no framework that's going to help that person on that journey. Now that I've thrown shades at our schools, let's now get back to individuals.
Yes.
Of course, that shade I choose also a shade I threw at myself because
Mm,
that's something I'm working on,
mm,
right? So now that we are done with schools, now on an individual level, having established that we have not been given the proper foundation to deal with comparison, but again, we all must take responsibility for our self education.
mm,
We must take responsibility for our personal development. And on that journey, one of the things I would always recommend is that every human being should get to that point where they recognize their uniqueness. So when we were all made from the very beginning, we were made unique. We were designed unique. We're all designed to live our lives uniquely. And each of us have unique combinations of gifts, unique combination of potential, unique combination of even our physical design.
mm,
So we should get to that point where we recognize our uniqueness as individuals. When you're recognizing your uniqueness, it gives you a mindset to also recognize that other human beings you're going to see are also going to have unique experiences or they also have their uniqueness also that we need to celebrate. So when you recognize your uniqueness, you celebrate it. But then you must remember that the next human being you're going to see on social media tomorrow, they have a unique life. They're going to have a unique experience. You should recognize that in them and also celebrate them for their uniqueness, right? Celebrate them, even though you look at your life, some things are not adding up. But once you recognize that, okay, each of us have this uniqueness, it helps you to a large extent recognize that even your journey to becoming, your journey into having some of the things you want to have, your timing is different from the next person's timing. So there's really no point for comparison. Even though we bring two persons together, they were born on the same day in the same hospital. When we begin to dissect their life, you're going to discover that they both have different lives. Their parents are different. Their families are different. The environment that they grew up in is going to be different. So ultimately, the result that we are going to manifest in life is also going to be different. So we have to make space that timings are different. Experiences are going to be different. If someone is cruising and enjoying their life and you are looking at, or maybe you have them as pictures on your vision board, see them as motivation, not competition. You tell yourself that if this person is already living the life I'm envisioning, it means that it's a possibility. I can get there. I just have to be consistent in my journey. I just have to keep building. I have to keep doing the things I'm doing because I have seen that someone is already there. Do you get?
Yes.
Then another thing I'm going to suggest, we have to intentionally guard our hearts. Sometimes you can recognize your uniqueness, recognize their uniqueness. You might celebrate them as often as you do, but our heart is usually very subtle. Sometimes you won't even know. Your heart will just, your heart will cross the line. And before you discover, you're already jealous of somebody. You're already angry. You're already envious. You're already saying, God, when?
Yeah.
And if care is not taken, if we're not intentional about guarding our hearts, right, then we can get to that place where comparison becomes unhealthy. So we have to constantly checkmate ourselves.
Yes.
Why do we desire the things we desire? Why do we want to have these things that we want to have? Do you get? So we have to be sincere with ourselves. And sometimes one of the practical things I do is I block people. If I see somebody that's giving me so much tension, even though the person is not giving me tension, the person is living their life.
Yes.
But I feel tension to help myself and to ensure that I don't cross that line of jealousy and that's going to lead to harm. I give myself brain and I remove them from my list or I block them. And I won't tell them I block them, but it's just for my self-preservation until my heart is enough or until my heart is robust enough to handle that success without feeling anger towards that person, right? So sometimes I block, right? And then I have a lot of other practices at home, self-motivation, focusing on my work, focusing on what I am building so much so that I don't have time to be consumed with jealousy and other people's work. But we're on the internet, we can't block everybody, right? So because we can't block everybody, we have to constantly remind ourselves that we are all unique.
Yes.
Celebrate people.
Yes.
Compliment people.
Yes.
While you're working, right? While you're working on manifesting and betting the things that you desire.
Amazing, to be honest. I think there is so much that people can, just pick from there. I was even going to add, given that I mentioned social media, I was going to add social media detox, but I mean, you pretty much already touched on it when you said you block people. Yeah. The truth is, it's not you being mean, it's just you, it's self-preservation, to be honest, and it's with all of the right intentions. Well, I want to say a big thank you for joining us on Wells Books Parade today. It's been such an insightful conversation with you, discussing how to regain your self-worth. So for every single person who is trying to understand their identity, to see themselves how God sees them, to know the difference between self-worth and self-esteem, and of course even the types of self-esteem, and of course how to regain and affirm their worth and esteem, and practical tips, which I've already touched on how to overcome self-esteem, this is definitely the book that you should be reading. Regain Your Self-Worth by Maureen Oluwatobi. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us on today's show.
Thank you.
All right, a big thank you to our author of the day. We do hope that you've picked a substantial amount of all that she has said, and we're going to be putting it to practice, definitely. But till next time, when I will be seated with yet another interesting author, ensure that you keep reading and